Appraisals. Sun Tzu said, "The military is a great matter of the state. It is the ground of death and life, the Tao of survival or extinction. One cannot but examine it."
The military provides protection. Although the Sun Tzu arose in relation to the political state, its logic applies to every form of life, for the function of protection is crucial to them all. Protection means respecting one's integrity, through either warding off or extending outward, through defending or conquering. It may entail conflict. Regardless of whether we find these functions pleasant, we must look into them.
And so base it into 5. Compare by means of the appraisals. Thus seek out its nature.
Addressed to the ruler, this chapter discusses the 5 factors and 7 appraisals by which one can assess the military.
The first is Tao, the second is heaven, the third is earth, the fourth is the general, the fifth is method.
The 5 are the well-known triad of heaven, earth, and humanity, flanked by Tao and method. Thus, the Sun Tzu announces its engagement with the major elements of warring states thought, and at the same time, its application beyond the field of military action. These 5 are a whole, inseparable in forming the basis of the military.
Tao is what causes the people to have the same purpose as their superior. Thus they can die with him, live with him, and not deceive him.
Tao is a roadway, a path, the way something works, and equally a recommended course of action, the way something should be done. As a verb, it means to lead, and thus leadership. All these meanings are present here. The word translated causes is also the common term for a military order. Here it indicates the way in which leader and led become of a single mind. This unity cannot be imposed from without. It arises when all are in tune with the larger order, the Tao, the way things work. And not deceive him. The standard texts conclude this line with some variant of, and not be anxious. The bamboo text is much stronger, since this passage concerns the unity of purpose, even to death, among one's troops. It matters less if they are afraid than if they conceal their state of mind.
Heaven is yin and yang, cold and hot, the order of the seasons. Going with it, going against it. This is military victory.
The second line appears only in the bamboo text. Heaven is not merely the sky or weather. It also represents larger patterns in the universe. Going with it, going against it, refers to compliance with these processes, which leads to victory. This need not be interpreted as external influence, but rather as the general's ability to align his actions with the larger patterns, thereby commanding coincidence.
Earth is high and low, broad and narrow, far and near, steep and level, death and life.
Just as heaven manifests in many forms, the earth takes varied shapes. These terrains have crucial implications for the military, offering death or life. But earth need not be considered only as physical forms of terrain. It is also the ground of any situation, its practical limitations and opportunities.
The general is knowledge, trustworthiness, courage, and strictness.
The standard text includes the definitive Confucian virtue ren, or humaneness, in this list. That term was apparently added by a later editor who hoped to portray the Sun Tzu general as a member of Confucian civil society. The general is the principle of leadership, that which brings together all the 5. His first quality is his knowledge. He is the central figure of the Sun Tzu. He is also anyone who would seek to understand this wisdom.
Method is ordering divisions, the Tao of ranking and principle supply.
Method originally referred to something that could be copied, like a small clay model used in the building of a house. From this, it came to mean standard forms of measurement, such as a quart dipper, which will always hold the same volume. More generally, it indicated any set of standards and eventually the way things could be properly done. The Chinese title of the text is Sun Tzu's Military Methods. Here, methods are the means by which the general structures large entities and repeatable functions within the military. They give coherence, predictability, and strength.
As for all these five, no general has not heard of them. Knowing them, one is victorious. Not knowing them, one is not victorious.
This is the first occurrence in the text of the crucial link between knowledge and victory. It is not enough to have heard of these five. One must know them from the inside. They are the basis of every situation. Fully understood and integrated, they lead to victory.
And so compare by means of the appraisals. Thus seek out its nature.
The appraisals are 7 ways to determine the state of the military. Perhaps the Sun Tzu once began with this section, since these 2 lines appear twice, once here and once near the start of the chapter.
Ask, which ruler has Tao? Which general has ability? Which attains heaven and earth? Which implements method and orders? Whose military and multitudes are strong? Whose officers and soldiers are trained? Whose rewards and punishments are clear? By these I know victory and defeat.
Whereas the 5 address the foundations of all action, the appraisals are focused more exclusively on military matters. They offer 7 bases of comparison between oneself and other. Tao is most important, followed by the general. Absolute standards are unnecessary. The general seeks knowledge by contrasting various qualities, since strength and weakness, self and other, are relative. Thus he knows victory.
The general heeds my appraisals. Employ him, and he is certainly victorious. Retain him. The general does not heed my appraisals. Employ him, and he is certainly defeated. Remove him.
Here the Sun Tzu addresses the ruler. The sovereign and his general must be synchronized. The sovereign manifests the vision. The general appraises conditions, determining how that vision can be carried out. Joined together, this makes victory.
Having appraised the advantages, heed them. Then make them into sure, to aid with the external. Sure is governing the balance according to the advantages.
The opening sections of this chapter have shown 2 ways of assessing the military, using the 5 and the appraisals. Now it is time to apply that knowledge to external matters. The key means is sure, the power inherent in a situation. Through comparisons, we learn where relative advantage lies. We can thus act to bring about a favorable disposition, or sure. The sure of any particular situation is constantly changing as conditions shift. It is as if we were placing weights along a beam whose balance point is always in motion. From knowledge gained through the appraisals, the fulcrum is more readily found.
The military is a Tao of deception. Thus, when able, manifest inability. When active, manifest inactivity. When near, manifest as far. When far, manifest as near. Thus, when he seeks advantage, lure him. When he is in chaos, take him. When he is substantial, prepare against him. When he is strong, avoid him. When he is wrathful, harass him. Attack where he is unprepared. Emerge where he does not expect it.
4 of these lines are in 4-word rhymed couplets, the diction of China's oldest poetry and a common feature of warring states' texts. The following 3 lines appear in the standard but not the bamboo text. When he is humble, make him proud. When he is at ease, make him labor. When he is in kinship, separate him. Deception is a means to become formless, invisible, unimaginable, or to appear as somewhere or something one is not. If we are not discernible to the enemy, they cannot prepare against us. If they cannot tell where we are, we could arise anywhere. Knowing the enemy's tendencies and momentum, it becomes simple to lure them, take them, or prepare against them. If they are occupied with responding to our initiatives, they become unable to mount their own.
These are the victories of the military lineage. They cannot be transmitted in advance.
Victories depend on Shur, whose configuration is never constant. The general must recognize a momentary advantage, capturing victory as it arises. These victories cannot be set aside for future use, nor can they be taught.
Now in the rod counting at court before battle, one is victorious who gets many counting rods. In the rod counting at court before battle, one is not victorious who gets few counting rods. Many counting rods is victorious over few counting rods. How much more so over no counting rods? By these means I observe them. Victory and defeat are apparent.
We know little about this calculation. Some historians presume it was done on the basis of the 7 appraisals, with strong positions receiving rods or tallies, but this is only speculation. Other contemporaneous texts speak of rod counting in the royal court or temple. In those instances, it may have been a form of divination, though the Sun Tzu is explicit that foreknowledge cannot be obtained in this way. From knowledge gained through the appraisals, one can know victory. But the particular means by which victory will be attained depend on the general's skill in battle. Though victory may be known in advance, the ever-changing Shur of battle exists only in the moment.
Doing battle. Sun Tzu said, "In sum, the method of employing the military. With 1,000 fast chariots, 1,000 leather-covered chariots, and 100,000 armored troops to be provisioned over 1,000 li, then expenses of outer and inner, stipends of foreign advisers, materials for glue and lacquer, and contributions for chariots and armor are 1,000 gold pieces a day. Only after this are 100,000 soldiers raised."
Mounting an army requires enormous resources. These expenses are unavoidable if you seek to do battle. Calculations here are not simply financial. The general is concerned with economy in its largest sense. This includes the complex balance of forces in which every aspect of the state, including social and moral life, is affected.
When one employs battle, if victory takes long, it blunts the military and grinds down its sharpness. Attacking walled cities, one's strength is diminished. If soldiers are long in the field, the state's resources are insufficient. Now if one blunts the military, grinds down its sharpness, diminishes its strength, and exhausts its goods, then the feudal lords ride one's distress and rise up. Even one who is wise cannot make good the aftermath. Thus in the military, One has heard of foolish speed, but has not observed skillful prolonging. And there has never been a military prolonging that has brought advantage to the state.
The feudal lords were rulers of the many states of North China. In the Sun Tzu, they are portrayed as unreliable allies who will swiftly transform into opportunistic enemies. The initial expense of bringing an army to battle is huge, and prolongation only magnifies it. Then your diminished resources create a new vulnerability. Nothing can protect you from this. If victory cannot be quickly attained, it is destructive to attempt it. The conventional use of force demands concerted effort. That grinds down the enemy, but it also blunts your own sharpness. This is prolongation, in which one mistakes the intensity of engagement for the path to victory. Although speed in battle can be misapplied, it is difficult for prolongation to bring advantage.
And so one who does not thoroughly know the harm from employing the military cannot thoroughly know the advantage from employing the military.
The use of military force is always destructive, to oneself as well as to the other. The general who ignores this will not know how to use the army to advantage, nor the particular advantages in using an army at all. He must be aware of every way that things can go wrong. The skillful general recognizes how harm can bring advantage, how the enemy's advantage may not bring him harm, how easily these can invert. By seeing the interdependence of advantage and harm, self and other, he moves to victory.
One skilled at employing the military does not have a second registering of conscripts nor a third loading of grain. One takes equipment from the state and relies on grain from the enemy. Thus, the army's food can be made sufficient.
When doing battle, avoid the extra burden of creating, transporting, maintaining, and consuming your own wealth. Instead, take advantage of goods that are already at hand. Thus, the enemy's resources are used to defeat them.
A state's impoverishment from its soldiers. When they are distant, there is distant transport. When they are distant and there is distant transport, the 100 clans are impoverished. When soldiers are near, things sell dearly. When things sell dearly, wealth is exhausted. When wealth is exhausted, people are hard-pressed by local taxes. Diminished strength in the heartland, emptiness in the households. Of the 100 clans' resources, 6/10 is gone. Of the ruling family's resources, broken chariots, worn-out horses, armor, helmets, arrows, crossbows, halberds, shields, spears, pavises, heavy ox-drawn wagons, 7/10 is gone. Thus the wise general looks to the enemy for food. 1 bushel of enemy food equals 20 bushels of mine. 1 bale of fodder equals 20 bales of mine.
The impoverishment of battle reaches to every part of the economy. It not only affects material goods, but also frays the social fabric. The general does not burden the state because he obtains his food and supplies from the enemy.
And so killing the enemy is a matter of wrath. Taking the enemy's goods is a matter of advantage.
Finding the right motivation, it is easy to get your troops either to kill or to take. But the economy of battle values the good use of both lives and material resources. Living off the enemy brings one closer to victory.
And so in chariot battles, when more than 10 chariots are captured, reward him who first captures one. Then change their flags and pennants. When the chariots are mixed together, ride them, supply the captives, and care for them. This is what is meant by victorious over the enemy, and so increasing one's strength.
Enemy equipment can be captured and turned against them. Give a chariot to the first person to take one in battle, fit it with your insignia, and integrate it into your forces. But food and equipment are not the only resources the general obtains from the enemy. He must win over their people as well. His strength increases when he brings the enemy around to the larger perspective.
And so the military values victory. It does not value prolonging.
This passage is an initial summary of the chapter. Victory means taking whole. Battle is costly. When prolonged, it is devastating to all. If battle is necessary, it must be quick.
And so the general who knows the military is the people's fate star, the ruler of the state's security and danger.
The fate star controls the time of death. This is a final summation of the chapter. Knowledge of the military shows the general how to use the enemy's resources, avoid prolongation, and find victory. That knowledge also gives him power to preserve or destroy the state. This is the largest economy, which extends far past battle. It ranges from natural principles in the heavens to the cost of glue, lacquer, and grain.
Strategy of attack. Sun Tzu said, "In sum, the method of employing the military, taking a state whole, is superior. Destroying it is inferior to this. Taking an army whole is superior. Destroying it is inferior to this. Taking a battalion whole is superior. Destroying it is inferior to this. Taking a company whole is superior. Destroying it is inferior to this. Taking a squad whole is superior. Destroying it is inferior to this. Therefore, 100 victories in 100 battles is not the most skillful. Subduing the other's military without battle is the most skillful."
The skillful general conquers the enemy without destroying them. Taking whole leaves them intact, transforms them. It builds upon itself. By contrast, 100 victories places battle at the center, ignoring the fact that conflict may lead to further conflict. This principle extends from the greatest to the smallest. This is not an argument against the use of force. Instead, it sees battle in the context of victory.
And so the superior military cuts down strategy. Its inferior cuts down alliances. Its inferior cuts down the military. The worst attacks walled cities.
The approach of taking whole first targets enemy strategy, undoing the coherence of their plan. This battle is won in the mind. Next best is to cut down the enemy's alliances, the connections that hold their world together. Next, it may be skillful to engage the enemy's forces in conventional military fashion. Brute assault is the least effective. This military is the protector of the state's integrity, seeking victory rather than conquest.
The method of attacking wall cities. Ready the siege towers and armored vehicles. This is completed after 3 months. Pile up the earthworks. This also takes 3 months. If the general is not victorious over his anger and sets them swarming like ants, 1/3 of the officers and soldiers are killed, and the walled city not uprooted. This is the calamity of attack.
Strategy manuals sometimes provide detailed instruction on the methods of siege. Here instead we see the wastefulness of blunt aggression, which consumes time, money, property, and lives. Furthermore, attacking the civilian homes of the enemy creates conditions that diminish any chance of taking whole. Aggression not only devastates enemy resources, it may also overcome the general, cloud his judgment, and draw him further into destruction and loss.
And so one skilled at employing the military subdues the other's military but does not do battle, uproots the other's walled city but does not attack, destroys the other's state but does not prolong. One must take it whole when contending for all under heaven. Thus the military is not blunted and advantage can be whole. This is the method of the strategy of attack.
The first 4 lines summarize the chapter so far. Only with the strategy of taking whole will the general find complete victory. This means assuming the perspective of the whole at the outset of the campaign. Thus, you keep your military intact, preserving both the advantage that leads to victory and the advantage that comes from victory. At times, you may have to destroy the enemy's state. If so, do it quickly. There is no simple rule on this.
And so the method of employing the military: when 10 to 1, surround them; when 5 to 1, attack them; when 2 to 1, do battle with them; when matched, then divide them; when fewer, then defend against them; when inadequate, then avoid them. Thus, a small enemy's tenacity is a large enemy's catch.
The standard text says, when 2 to 1, then divide them; when matched, then be able to battle them. This is inconsistent with the Sun Tzu's logic, and following certain early texts, we have inverted these 2 phrases. Though it is better to take whole and avoid conflict, sometimes battle is necessary. In each case, the best strategy will arise from your particular circumstances. Assess the enemy's strength relative to your own and respond accordingly. Attachment to any strategy, however good, leads to defeat. The general may flee from battle if the larger victory demands it.
Now the general is the safeguard of the state. If the safeguard is complete, the state is surely strong. If the safeguard is flawed, the state is surely weak.
Here, the state is the final good, the entity whose integrity must be maintained. The general is its protector. Only when he is fully accomplished does he ensure its welfare.
And so the sovereign brings adversity to the army in 3 ways. Not knowing the army is unable to advance, yet ordering an advance. Not knowing the army is unable to retreat, yet ordering a retreat. This is what is meant by hobbling the army. Not knowing affairs within the 3 armies, yet controlling the governance of the 3 armies. Then the army's officers are confused. Not knowing the 3 armies' balance, yet controlling appointments in the 3 armies. Then the army's officers are distrustful. Once the 3 armies are confused and distrustful, troubles from the feudal lords intensify. This is what is meant by an army in chaos leads to victory.
The 3 armies refer to divisions of center, left, and right within the larger body of troops. They indicate all the forces of the state. The sovereign calls upon the general to act, but skillful action depends on the authority that comes from knowledge. Knowledge arises from the situation at hand. Lacking this knowledge, a sovereign who interferes in military activities creates chaos. An army in chaos leads to victory for the enemy.
And so knowing victory is 5-fold. Knowing when one can and cannot do battle is victory. Knowing the use of the many and the few is victory. Superior and inferior desiring the same is victory. Being prepared and awaiting the unprepared is victory. The general being capable and the ruler not interfering is victory. These 5 are a Tao of knowing victory.
Knowing victory means being able to nurture those conditions that determine victory. It depends on the mastery of many disciplines, the moment of pulling the trigger, the use of varied troop strength, morale, waiting, and the proper relations between general and ruler. These 5 must become a single, inexhaustible way to victory.
And so in the military, Knowing the other and knowing oneself, in 100 battles no danger. Not knowing the other and knowing oneself, 1 victory for 1 loss. Not knowing the other and not knowing oneself, in every battle certain defeat.
Knowledge protects one from danger. The general must know both self and other, conditions here and conditions there. This requires an ability to penetrate all aspects of the world. Victory comes from taking whole. It includes both self and other in a single vision.
Form. Sun Tzu said, "Of old the skilled first made themselves invincible to await the enemy's vincibility. Invincibility lies in oneself. Vincibility lies in the enemy. Thus the skilled can make themselves invincible. They cannot cause the enemy's vincibility. Thus it is said, victory can be known, it cannot be made."
Elsewhere, the Sun Tzu gives explicit advice about making victory. Here, though, it emphasizes one's ground of action, preparing the conditions of invincibility within one's own sphere. This is not yet victory. One must wait for the enemy's vincibility to arise. Skill is knowing that moment.
Invincibility is defense. Vincibility is attack. Defend and one has a surplus. Attack and one is insufficient.
The standard text says, "Attack when you have a surplus, defend when you are insufficient." This logic maintains the convention of gaining victory through attack. The bamboo text points to the vulnerability of attack and the subtle power of defense.
Of old, those skilled at defense hid below the 9 earths and moved above the 9 heavens. Thus they could preserve themselves and be all victorious.
Here, the standard text has, "One skilled at defense hides below the 9 earths. One skilled at attack moves above the 9 heavens." This obscures the more powerful message of the bamboo text, which shows instead a defense not based in conflict. In the best defense, one goes outside the range of enemy insight, becoming ungraspable and thus unbeatable. Victory need not be achieved by will or devastation. The all-victorious general resides beyond defeat.
In seeing victory, not going beyond what everyone knows is not skilled. Victory in battle that all under heaven calls skilled is not skilled. Thus, lifting an autumn hair does not mean great strength. Seeing the sun and the moon does not mean a clear eye. Hearing thunder does not mean a keen ear. So-called skill is to be victorious over the easily defeated. Thus, the battles of the skilled are without extraordinary victory, without reputation for wisdom, and without merit for courage.
According to Chinese lore, the downy coats of birds and animals are especially fine at the onset of fall. The standard text says, "What is meant by skill is to be victorious over the easily defeated." It implies that the skilled general fights only those he can readily beat, and thus develops no reputation for greatness. The bamboo text comes to the same conclusion, but for different reasons. What most people can see is not skill. True skill is both invisible to ordinary people and achieves more than they can envision. Thus, the general's victories are unknown.
And so one's victories are without error. Being without error, what one arranges is necessarily victorious, since one is victorious over the defeated. One skilled at battle takes a stand in the ground of no defeat, and so does not lose the enemy's defeat. Therefore, the victorious military is first victorious and after that does battle. The defeated military first does battle and after that seeks victory.
For the skilled general, victory is attained before the battle is joined. Abiding in his invincibility, he awaits the moment at which he can seize the enemy's vincibility. A military that rushes to the fight, hoping for victory, assumes the ground of defeat.
And so one who is skilled cultivates Tao and preserves method. Thus one can be the measure of victory and defeat.
Tao is the way things are, the way things go of their own accord, the natural momentum. Method is ordering human actions in ways that are in accord with Tao. The general assumes this power when he is tuned into the larger perspective, thus becoming the governor of victory and defeat.
As for method, first, measure length. Second, measure volume. Third, count. Fourth, weigh. The fifth is victory. Earth gives birth to length. Length gives birth to volume. Volume gives birth to counting. Counting gives birth to weighing. Weighing gives birth to victory.
Method gives rise to victory because it is in direct contact with the phenomenal world. Here, that is done through calculations. First, measure the linear, the two-dimensional. Second, measure volume, the three-dimensional. Third, determine how many fill that space. Fourth, weigh the potentials. The fifth is victory. Because the world is fully interconnected, each calculation is linked necessarily to its successor. Conflict is made up of small details. If one can see the depth and subtlety of measurable things, then victory is not mysterious.
A victorious military is like weighing a hundredweight against a grain. A defeated military is like weighing a grain against a hundredweight. One who weighs victory sets the people to battle, like releasing amassed water into a gorge 1,000 ren deep. This is form.
Because you have taken the measure of things, you know their true weight. Victory is then arranging the balance to create preponderance. Like the release of water down a steep ravine, this is sure.
Sure. Ordering the many is like ordering the few. It is division and counting. Fighting the many is like fighting the few. It is form and name.
The Chinese character for ordering suggests regulating or properly arranging. When you give order to the many, when the large is divided into the small, working with the many becomes like working with the few. When you form troops into clearly named divisions, fighting with the many is no different from fighting with the few. The same principles apply, activated by the same gestures. As well, interacting with the small, you establish connections that accumulate power as you build to the large. Thus, you command the vastness by working with the manageable and immediate, that which is right in front of you. This is effective on all levels of command.
The multitude of the three armies can be made to meet all enemies without defeat. It is the extraordinary and the orthodox.
The orthodox translates the Chinese word zheng. Its original meaning, at least 1,000 years before the Sun Tzu, was straight and thus correct. From these senses evolved the term to govern. The orthodox, then, is the right way to do things according to public measures. In social life, it would indicate conventional good form. The extraordinary is literally the strange. It has none of the political associations of the orthodox. In general, the orthodox is the familiarity of our world, the ways in which we engage reality, the way our senses normally work. It is what we and the enemy expect. For the military, it is accepted means and models. It may also include conventional strategy and tactics. The extraordinary is always surprising. It is not defined as any particular action. It is simply what the enemy does not expect.
How a military comes to prevail. Like throwing a grindstone against an egg, it is the empty and the solid.
The military conquers through preponderance. Concentrate your force at the empty point where your enemy cannot resist.
In sum, when in battle, use the orthodox to engage. Use the extraordinary to attain victory.
Engage people with what they expect. It is what they are able to discern and confirms their projections. It settles them into predictable patterns of response, occupying their minds while you wait for the extraordinary moment, that which they cannot anticipate. The orthodox prepares the ground for the possibility of the extraordinary. Only through complete training in the conventions of your craft are you able to recognize subtle variations in your enemy's practice of it and respond immediately to them. The extraordinary is unanticipated, but the orthodox is not fixed either. It changes as people's perceptions grow and shift. Use of these two thus requires constant awareness of the enemy's developing state of mind. It is a contemplative exercise, not a repeatable trick.
And so one skilled at giving rise to the extraordinary, as boundless as heaven and earth, as inexhaustible as the yellow river and the ocean, ending and beginning again, it is the sun and the moon, dying and then being born, it is the four seasons.
The general gives rise to the extraordinary, literally gives birth to it. He does not create or assemble it. Uncreated, it is inexhaustible, like heaven and earth. Like cycles of the natural world, large beyond human reach, it ends but begins again.
Musical pitches do not exceed 5, yet all their variations cannot be heard. Colors do not exceed 5, yet all their variations cannot be seen. Tastes do not exceed 5, yet all their variations cannot be tasted. The sure of battle do not exceed the extraordinary and the orthodox, yet all their variations cannot be exhausted. The extraordinary and the orthodox circle and give birth to each other. As a circle has no beginning, who is able to exhaust it?
5 pitches combine to make all music. Every amazing sight in our world derives from only 5 colors. Out of finite elements, an endless display emerges. In the same way, the many sure of battle are a matter only of the extraordinary and orthodox. Knowing this, one can discern the simple patterns that lie within the overwhelming multiplicity of phenomena. Mastering the extraordinary and orthodox, one can create sure inexhaustibly. The extraordinary and orthodox give birth to each other. They are interdependent. What is extraordinary now may soon become orthodox. An apparently orthodox action may be what your adept opponent least expects from you. Thus, the extraordinary and orthodox depend entirely on our conception of them.
The rush of water to the point of tossing rocks about, this is sure. The strike of a hawk at the killing snap, this is the node. Therefore, one skilled at battle, his sure is steep, his node is short. Sure is like drawing the crossbow. The node is like pulling the trigger.
Sure is the power inherent in a configuration. It does not rely solely on powerful components. As Lao Tzu says, water is the softest thing in the world, yet here it tosses rocks about. This water is powerful because it has come together in a particular conformation, cascading through the ravine. The node is that small juncture between the sections of bamboo. It indicates the abrupt moment at which something occurs, the present between past and future. It must be short. Its target is always in motion. The power of Shur comes from combining these two elements. When you pull the trigger of a crossbow, its gradually accumulated energy is released all at once in one spot.
Puan Puan, Huan Huan. The fight is chaotic, yet one is not subject to chaos. Hun Huan, Duan Duan. One's form is round, and one cannot be defeated.
Huan Huan indicates tangled cords and the confusion of battle. Huan Duan is the word for a whole whose pieces cannot be individually identified. Roundness suggests completeness. In chaotic conditions, the usual patterns, which constitute the orthodox world, are not discernible. One order has gone, and the next has not yet arisen. Chaos thus offers continual openings to someone who can perceive a deeper order. One's form is round because all possibilities are included in it. One can respond without confusion to whatever emerges. Thus, one cannot be defeated.
Chaos is born from order. Cowardice is born from bravery. Weakness is born from strength. Order and chaos are a matter of counting. Bravery and cowardice are a matter of Shur. Strength and weakness are a matter of form.
Counting stands for division and counting. It refers to dividing one's army into smaller, manageable groups. Placing your army in proper conditions of Shur brings out its natural bravery. Form indicates troop formations and, more generally, any shaping of forces. Cowardice and bravery are two moments of a single cycle. Instead of manipulating one part of the cycle, shape the environment using counting, Shur, or form, and the quality you seek readily occurs.
One skilled at moving the enemy forms, and the enemy must follow. Offers, and the enemy must take. Move them by this, and await them with troops.
Do not fight the enemy head-on. Instead, shape their ground. This narrows the enemy's course of action, leading them where you want. They have no alternative. If your offer is made from the perspective of victory, they choose it as if it were their own idea. This is skill.
And so, one skilled at battle seeks it in Shur and does not demand it of people. Thus one can dispense with people and employ Shur.
Victory does not come from accumulating troop strength or creating heroism. Rather, bring about advantageous Shur to shape the field of battle. In the defile, one person stands off 100. In winter, the enemy's impassable river becomes your road of ice. Relying on Shur, the battle of army against army need not occur. This is the highest skill. It is victory.
One who uses Shur sets people to battle as if rolling trees and rocks. As for the nature of trees and rocks, when still, they are at rest. When agitated, they move. When square, they stop. When round, they go. Thus the Shur of one skilled at setting people to battle is like rolling round rocks from a mountain 1,000 ren high. This is Shur.
The mountain, like the crossbow, emphasizes the potential energy aspect of Shur. Victory is not based solely on the quality of your people or their strength of will. Thus, there is no need to remake or alter them. If you know their nature, you can position them so that they become natural weapons. Thus, you take advantage of the way power arises in the world.
The solid and empty. One who takes position first at the battleground and awaits the enemy is at ease. One who takes position later at the battleground and hastens to do battle is at labor. Thus one skilled at battle summons others and is not summoned by them. How one can make the enemy arrive of their own accord, offer them advantage. How one can prevent the enemy from arriving, harm them. Thus how one can make the enemy labor when at ease and starve when full, emerge where they must hasten.
Arrive first at the place of battle, gain the initiative, and wait. You have shaped the conflict, bringing the enemy to the battlefield of your choice. Offer real or imagined advantage to move them. Threaten real or imagined harm to restrict them. Because you appear unexpectedly at a vital point, the enemy must rush to meet you. Hurried, they labor. Laboring, they are insufficient. These are mental as much as physical conditions. They divert the enemy's attention and cloud their vision.
To go 1,000 li without fear, go through unpeopled ground. To attack and surely take it, attack where they do not defend. To defend and surely hold firm, defend where they will surely attack. Thus, with one skilled at attack, the enemy does not know where to defend. With one skilled at defense, the enemy does not know where to attack.
The standard text reads, "To defend and surely hold firm, defend where they will not attack." At first glance, this looks wise. You are promised a secure defense because the enemy does not attack you there. But a perfectly defended fortress that no one wishes to attack is simply irrelevant. Furthermore, the bamboo text has a stronger logic. You cannot entirely control where the enemy will attack, but if you know in advance the location of their attack, your defense can be secure. When advancing, move through open space, any ground that is unnoticed or uncontested. In attack, find the enemy's unguarded moment. In defense, knowing their objective, hold strong at the point of their attack. They will know neither where to defend nor where to attack.
Subtle, subtle, to the point of formlessness. Spirit-like, spirit-like, to the point of soundlessness. Thus one can be the enemy's fate star.
An ancient Chinese ode says, "Heaven is soundless, odorless. The fate star controls the time of death." If you are formless and soundless, your movement and intentions are invisible to the enemy. If you synchronize your actions with natural processes, your power is predominant.
To advance so one cannot be resisted, charge against the empty. To retreat so that one cannot be stopped, go so far that one cannot be reached. And so, if I wish to do battle, the enemy cannot but do battle with me. I attack what he must save. If I do not wish to do battle, I mark a line on the earth to defend it, and the enemy cannot do battle with me. I misdirect him.
You reach your objective with ease if you encounter no resistance. Find the open way, that which the enemy does not defend or even notice. Your advance or attack is successful because it is directed at an unguarded target. In retreat, remove yourself beyond reach. In battle, attack the enemy's vital point. If you wish to avoid battle, cause your enemy to believe that you are invulnerable. Your confidence is so imposing that they cannot trust their own perceptions.
So the skilled general forms others, yet is without form. Hence I am concentrated, and the enemy is divided. I am concentrated, and thus one. The enemy is divided, and thus 1/10. This is using 1/10 to strike one.
You dictate the enemy's form and manifestation while remaining formless yourself. Thus, you keep your focus and remain strong, while they must split their strength against you.
When I am few and the enemy is many, I can use the few to strike the many because those with whom I do battle are restricted. The ground on which I do battle with him cannot be known. Then the enemy's preparations are many. When his preparations are many, I battle the few. Prepare the front, and the rear has few. Prepare the left, and the right has few. Everywhere prepared, everywhere few. The few are those who prepare against others. The many are those who make others prepare against them.
The standard texts all say, "When I am many and the enemy is few, I can use the many to strike the few." The bamboo text inverts this. Though outnumbered, you still can attack. The enemy is formed by you. They must prepare against you on all sides. Thus, even your smaller force outnumbers that portion of their troops you engage. In this way, you make their many few. You are prepared for everything because your preparation is not focused on any single possibility.
Knowing the battle day and knowing the battleground, one can go 1,000 li and do battle. Not knowing the battle day and not knowing the battleground, the front cannot help the rear cannot help the front, the left cannot help the right cannot help the left. How much more so when the far is several tens of li and the near is several li away.
You attain victory even when starting from far away because you know the objective, the time and place of battle. This does not depend only on advanced knowledge. It is also determined by making others prepare against you. Lacking this knowledge, your command is in disarray.
Though by my estimate the military of UA is many, how does this further victory? Thus it is said, victory can be usurped. Although the enemy is numerous, they can be kept from fighting.
Yue was the populous state of southeastern China, the mortal enemy of Wu, where Sun Tzu is said to have served. Victory can be usurped. The Chinese word for usurped has the sense of turned, but also of taking something that is not properly one's own. The standard text reads, "Victory can be made." A later editor apparently felt the need to soften the text. Though many troops may be an asset, they do not by themselves assure success. Fewer troops with greater strategy can take a victory not apparently theirs.
And so prick them and know the pattern of their movement in stillness. Form them and know the ground of death and life. Appraise them and know the plans for gain and loss. Probe them and know the places of surplus and insufficiency.
True knowledge of the enemy comes from active contact, which the general initiates and conducts. He provokes them to reveal themselves, assessing the full extent of their reactions and resources.
The ultimate in giving form to the military is to arrive at formlessness. When one is formless, deep spies cannot catch a glimpse, and the wise cannot strategize.
Your form cannot be assessed by spies or strategists because there is nothing there for them to grasp. Thus they are formed by their own projections, which is all they can discern. These projections, in turn, reveal their position to you. This is a Tao of deception.
Rely on form to bring about victory over the multitude, and the multitude cannot understand. The elite all know the form by which I am victorious, but no one knows how I determine the form of victory. Do not repeat the means of victory, but respond to form from the inexhaustible.
Ordinary people see the victory, but not the form by which it is achieved. The elite understand the form of victory, but not how that form arose. The general, free from fixation on particular means, responds inexhaustibly to each new situation.
Now the form of the military is like water. Water in its movement avoids the high and hastens to the low. The military in its victory avoids the solid and strikes the empty. Thus, water determines its movement in accordance with the earth. The military determines victory in accordance with the enemy. The military is without fixed sure and without lasting form. To be able to transform with the enemy is what is meant by spirit-like.
This is the initial summary of the chapter. The essential quality of the all-victorious military is that it has no fixed form. This is its power, that it manifests in whatever way is required to attain victory, spirit-like, transforming without obstacle, without hesitation. It takes shape in response to what is given, the enemy, their disposition, the terrain, any aspect of battle.
Of the 5 phases, none is the lasting victor. Of the 4 seasons, none has constant rank. The sun shines short and long. The moon dies and lives.
In the conquest cycle of the 5 phases, water overcomes fire, which in turn overcomes wood, which overcomes metal, which overcomes earth, which overcomes water. The phenomenal world is in constant transformation, yet there are patterns within it. Holding to any single point loses the power of the larger pattern.
Spirit-like essentials.
This final summation is not present in any of the standard texts.
The army contending. Sun Tzu said, "In sum, the method of employing the military. The general receives the command from the sovereign, joins with the army, gathers the multitude, organizes them, and encamps. Nothing is more difficult than an army contending."
The chain of command is initiated only by the sovereign. The general organizes the army and then takes it into the field. Nothing is more difficult than contending, because everything is at stake and so much remains unpredictable.
The difficulty for a contending army is to make the circuitous direct and to make the adverse advantageous. Thus make their road circuitous and lure them with advantage. Setting out later than others and arriving sooner is knowing the appraisals of circuitous and direct.
The goal for a contending army is to transform the circuitous and direct. Because the general is not limited by how things are defined for him, he can reverse conditions in various ways, apparently turning logic on its head. He makes the adverse advantageous, not by overcoming obstacles, but by giving those difficulties to the enemy, making their road circuitous. He offers advantage to confound their perceptions, changing what is easy into what is difficult. Thus, he is able to invert space and time, setting out after and arriving before. In these ways, he attacks the basic strategy of the enemy.
A contending army brings advantage. A contending army brings danger. Contending for advantage with an entire army, one will not get there. Contending for advantage with a reduced army, one's baggage train is diminished. Therefore, rolling up one's armor, hastening after advantage day and night without camping, continually marching at the double for 100 li and then contending for advantage, the commander of the 3 armies is captured. The strong ones sooner, the worn-out ones later, and 1 in 10 arrives. Going 50 li and contending for advantage, the ranking general falls. By this method, half arrive. Going 30 li and contending for advantage, 2/3 arrive. Therefore, an army without a baggage train is lost, without grain and food is lost, without supplies is lost.
Contending is a major function of the military. It cannot be avoided. But rushing to seize advantage on another's ground brings loss of every kind. Keep the army gathered, attending to the basic needs of your troops. Remain with the advantage your current circumstances offer.
Therefore, not knowing the strategies of the feudal lords, one cannot ally with them. Not knowing the form of mountains and forests, defiles and gorges, marshes and swamps, one cannot move the army. Not employing local guides, one cannot obtain the advantage of the ground.
Without knowledge, one cannot act skillfully. Knowledge must come from every available source and extend to all aspects of the enemy.
And so the military is based on guile, acts due to advantage, transforms by dividing and joining.
The all-victorious military is founded in deception, motivated by victory, and endlessly transforming. These are the basic elements of the general's knowledge.
And so, swift like the wind, slow like the forest, raiding and plundering like fire, not moving like a mountain, difficult to know like yin, moving like thunder.
Yin is the mate of yang. It is dark, quiet, hidden. 6 ways of moving, 6 ways of being and of changing. These powers of the natural world are the powers of the skillful general, of the victorious military. Who can resist the wind or move a mountain?
When plundering the countryside, divide the multitude. When expanding territory, divide the advantage. Weigh it and act.
Disperse your troops and distribute the goods among them. By dividing captured resources, one strengthens loyalties. As these resources are balanced throughout one's realm, they become less susceptible to recapture. Thus, your actions overlook immediate advantage so as to further victory.
One who knows in advance the Tao of the circuitous and direct is victorious. This is the method of the army contending.
The standard text speaks of knowing the appraisals of the circuitous and direct. Here we follow the bamboo text, which speaks instead of knowing their Tao. Contending is, finally, a matter of the circuitous and direct. The general knows these in advance, though it is not primarily through information on marshes and swamps or the intent of the feudal lords. Rather, it is through an understanding of how things transform and invert, the adverse and advantageous, the circuitous and direct. These are a Tao of the contending army.
Therefore, the governance of the army says, because they could not hear each other, they made drums and bells. Because they could not see each other, they made flags and pennants. Therefore, in day battle, use more flags and pennants. In night battle, use more drums and bells. Drums and bells, flags and pennants are the means by which one unifies the eyes and ears of the people. Once the people have been tightly unified, the brave have no chance to advance alone. The cowardly have no chance to retreat alone. This is the method of employing the many.
The governance of the army is an otherwise unknown military text. Signals are a solution to military communication in the chaos of movement and battle, in the day or night. Just as signs and symbols foster the coherence of a culture, signals bring unity to the military. They equalize disparities of bravery or cowardice and prevent extreme cases of independent action, even under intense conditions of battle. Thus, the army becomes the focused expression of its leader's strategy.
And so the chi of the 3 armies can be seized. The heart-mind of the commander can be seized. Therefore, morning chi is sharp, midday chi is lazy, evening chi is spent. Thus one skilled at employing the military avoids their sharp qi and strikes their lazy and spent qi. This is ordering qi.
Qi is the breath, the life force. The day, the seasons, the enemy's qi, all are cycles. The general does not seek to overcome these nor regulate them, but to know their nature. Thus he can seize the opportunities they offer. This is ordering qi.
Use order to await chaos. Use stillness to await clamor. This is ordering the heart-mind.
The Chinese character for ordering has the basic sense of regulating or arranging, as well as connotations of ruling. You order the heart-mind by remaining in the stillness and order that are already present at the center of all chaos and clamor.
Use the near to await the far. Use ease to await labor. Use fullness to await hunger. This is ordering strength.
It is not necessary to exercise your strength. Instead, rest in your sufficiency.
Do not engage well-ordered penance. Do not strike imposing formations. This is ordering transformation.
Transformation is a matter of dividing or joining your troops and those of the enemy. You order transformation by holding your seat. In sum, you order by not doing, particularly when the situation is too strong to alter in any other way. Avoid the enemy's sharp qi. Wait in stillness. Rest in your completeness. Do not go against their plenitude. Then you strike their spent or lazy qi. This is ordering.
And so the method of employing the military. Do not face them when they are on a high hill. Do not go against them with their back to a mound. Do not pursue them when they feign defeat. Leave a way out for surrounded soldiers. Do not block soldiers returning home. This is the method of employing the many.
The standard text has these lines in different order and contains as well the following. Do not attack sharp troops. Do not eat soldier bait. Do not press exhausted invaders. In many simple configurations, the enemy harbors a great strength. Here it is the kind of sure the general himself seeks to develop. Back to a mound, troops energized with desperation. Rather than developing still more powerful countermeasures, he cedes ground, allowing sure advantageous to the enemy to spend itself harmlessly. At the right moment, not acting is the most skillful action.
465.
This number appears at the end of the bamboo strip, separated by 2 horizontal marks from the sentence, "This is the method of employing the many." It records the total number of characters in the chapter, perhaps for verification against the original being copied, perhaps for scribal payment. Other chapters probably had similar indications, but those are not preserved.
The 9 transformations. Sun Tzu said, in sum, the method of employing the military. The general receives the command from the sovereign, joins with the army, and gathers the multitude.
Every standard edition of the Sun Tzu contains these 2 lines. They are identical to the opening phrases of Chapter 7, but do not reproduce that passage in its entirety. They may be traces of a very early stage in the book's formation, when the place of these sentences had not yet been determined. Their presence here demonstrates the loose principles by which the Sun Tzu is structured.
In spread-out ground, do not encamp. In junction ground, join with allies. In crossing ground, do not linger. In enclosed ground, strategize. In death ground, do battle.
Conditions of the ground dictate the actions you can take. Spread out ground leaves you exposed to attack. Do not encamp here. The shared and ever-changing borders of junction ground require alliances with neighbors. The intense comings and goings of crossing ground make you vulnerable on every side. Hurry through it. Enclosed ground is hard to enter or leave, so you must plan carefully. Death ground is choiceless. Every activity, in life as in battle, takes place on a certain ground. Every ground suggests the response most appropriate to it.
There are roads one does not follow. There are armies one does not strike. There are cities one does not attack. There are grounds one does not contest. There are commands of the sovereign one does not accept.
It may seem that the military's objective is to overcome all obstacles. But there are some objectives one simply does not pursue. An enemy position may be too powerful. A ruler's orders may not be based on intimate knowledge of conditions. It is the general's responsibility to know the ground of each situation. As this shifts and changes, he must look freshly at every circumstance and make his decision. The military seeks not conquest, but victory.
And so the general who comprehends the advantages of the 9 transformations knows how to employ the military. The general who does not comprehend the advantages of the 9 transformations, though knowing the form of the ground, is unable to obtain the advantages of the ground. When one orders the military but does not know the teachings of the 9 transformations, though knowing the 5 advantages, one is unable to employ people.
The 5 advantages are not specified, but may refer to the 5 grounds mentioned near the start of this chapter. The 9 transformations are every possible manifestation of things, the general's treasury of knowledge. The world is in constant change, yet at each moment it appears as a particular quality, form, or sure. Knowing these, you can successfully employ the military. Not knowing these, any other knowledge becomes powerless. If you do not also have the ability to transform endlessly, even the advantages of the 5 grounds become an inferior knowledge that will only restrict you.
Therefore, the plans of the wise necessarily include advantage and harm. They include advantage, thus one's service can be trusted. They include harm, thus adversity can be undone. Therefore, subdue the feudal lords with harm, occupy the feudal lords with tasks, hasten the feudal lords with advantage.
The general's promise and threat include the full range of action. Thus, he can control the activities of both allies and enemies.
And so the method of employing the military: do not rely on their not coming. Rely on what we await them with. Do not rely on their not attacking. Rely on how we are unable to be attacked.
Do not base your plans on what the enemy may do. Rely instead on your preparedness. Better, move entirely outside the grasp of their strategy, and you cannot be attacked.
And so, for the general there are 5 dangers. Resolved to die, one can be killed. Resolved to live, one can be captured. Quick to anger, one can be goaded. Pure and honest, one can be shamed. Loving the people, one can be aggravated. All 5 are the excesses of the general, a calamity in employing the military. To overturn an army and kill the general, one must use the 5 dangers. One cannot but examine them.
Willing to die for his cause, being pure and honest, loving the people, even virtues become vulnerabilities when taken to an extreme. The general's fixation offers an easy means to turn his energy back upon him. Simply put him into a situation in which his propensities become intensified and you find victory.
moving the army. Sun Tzu said, "In sum, positioning the army and scrutinizing the enemy."
The chapter addresses each of these two topics in turn. Taking position concerns finding places that maximize your strength. Scrutinizing the enemy explains how to gain knowledge of your adversary's conditions by examining the phenomenal world. Scrutinize is the word used for traditional physiognomy, the reading of someone's character from his or her face.
In crossing mountains, hold to the valleys. Look out at life ground and take a high position. Battle downhill, do not ascend. This is positioning the army in mountains.
Mountains are difficult to cross, as they are full of dangerous and quick-changing shur. Enter only if you can obtain secure ground.
In crossing water, one must distance oneself from it. When the invader approaches across water, do not meet him in the water. To order a strike when he is half across is advantageous. When wishing to do battle, do not go close to the water to meet the invader. Look out at life ground and take a high position. Do not go against the current. This is positioning the army by water.
Water makes for slow crossing, and one remains vulnerable for a considerable time. Take advantage of its ability to disorder the enemy's army.
In crossing salt marshes, be sure to leave quickly. Do not linger. If one encounters an army in the midst of a salt marsh, hold to the water grass and keep one's back to the trees. This is positioning the army in salt marshes.
Salt marshes are unpredictable. Ground you might consider unreliable in other settings could be your best defense.
On plains, take a position on level ground. Keep the high to the right and back. In front, death. Behind, life. This is positioning the army on plains.
Plains are open and easy, exposed in every direction. Rely on whatever advantages the terrain may offer, keeping the way clear for escape.
All four are the advantages of the army, how the Yellow Emperor was victorious over the four emperors.
In early mythology, the Yellow Emperor is the creator of warfare, defeating the emperors of the four directions. Like the four emperors, there are four kinds of terrain considered here. The ground of any situation, whether physical or psychological, has particular characteristics. These suggest certain cautions. The general's strength is limited. He positions his troops in relation to the terrain, seeking powerful shur that will magnify their force.
In sum, the army likes the high and hates the low, values yang and disdains yin, sustains life and takes a position in the solid. This is what is meant by surely victorious. The army is without the 100 afflictions.
Yang is light, open, active, and forceful. Yin is its complement. The victorious army retains the advantage of position, maintains its health, and remains firmly encamped, drawing strength from the environment.
In hills and dikes, take a position in yang. Keep them to the right and back. This is the advantage of the military, the assistance of the earth.
By remaining above the enemy, you battle down. This is using the naturally occurring conditions of the ground to protect your forces.
When it has rained upstream, the stream's flow intensifies. Stop fording. Wait for it to calm.
Some conditions take time to run their course before they are favorable to your movement. If you face a surge of enemy force, it may be best to let it subside before acting.
When crossing heavenly ravines, heavenly wells, heavenly prisons, heavenly nets, Heavenly sinkholes and heavenly fissures, one must quickly leave them. Do not go near. When I am far from them, the enemy is near them. When I face them, the enemy has his back to them.
The particulars of these forms of ground are unknown to commentators. The dangers they conceal are clearly unworkable, however great the general. Simply leave them. Take position so that you direct the enemy into them.
When alongside the army are defiles, ponds, reeds, small forests, and dense vegetation that can conceal people, search these carefully and repeatedly. They are where the devious take position.
Confusion, murk, and haze, lack of clarity of any kind, are perfect hiding places for the devious as they interfere with your clear sight.
When the enemy is near and still, he is relying on the steep. When the enemy is far and provokes battle, he wishes the other to advance. He is occupying the level and advantageous.
This chapter has discussed responses to various types of ground. These lines mark a transition into its second part, which addresses scrutiny, reading enemy conditions from evidence in the phenomenal world. The enemy's positioning reveals their intention. In each case, they seek to engage you from configurations of sure that are disadvantageous to you.
Many trees move. He is approaching. Many obstacles and thick grass. He is misleading us. Birds rise up. He is concealing himself. Animals are startled. He is launching a total assault.
Trees, plants, birds, and beasts represent the fourfold division of the Chinese natural world. Because all its parts are connected, the environment around the enemy contains invaluable messages of their activity. By reading this environment, you are reading their designs.
Dust is high and sharp. Chariots are approaching. It is low and wide. The infantry is approaching. It is dispersed and wispy. The firewood gatherers are approaching. It is scattered here and there. He is encamping his army.
Even the dust speaks. This is not book knowledge. This is not even knowledge of the extraordinary and orthodox. This is a scout's observations from the field. Since anything that occurs affects everything around it, the smallest phenomenon leads you to the complete view. This is true from scout's knowledge to the general's total vision.
His words are humble and his preparations increase. He will advance. His words are strong and his advance is forced. He will retreat. Light chariots come out first and take a position on the flank. He is deploying. He is not in difficulty, yet requests peace. He is strategizing. They rush out to deploy. He has set the moment. Half of them advance. He is luring you.
Having read the opposing general through his effect on vegetation, animals, and dust, now we read him through his words and deeds. But his actions may not directly represent his intentions. Look for contradictions between the two.
They lean on their weapons. They are hungry. Those who draw water drink first. They are thirsty. They see advantage but do not advance. They are tired.
These are indications of increasing devastation. First come signs of hunger, thirst, tiredness, exhaustion of the body. They are apparent as soon as military decorum and procedures are not followed. Thus the importance of maintaining the orthodox and of noting the enemy's apparently trivial deviations from it.
Birds gather. It is empty. They call out at night. They are afraid. The encampment is disorderly. The general has no weight. Flags and pennants are moved about. There is chaos. Officers are angry. They are fatigued. They feed grain to their horses and eat meat. The army does not hang up their water pots. and they do not return to their quarters. The invaders are exhausted.
Next are signs of disorder in the encampment, which reach an extreme in frenzied consumption. All regulations governing conduct and supplies are abandoned.
He repeatedly and soothingly speaks to his men in measured tones. He has lost the multitude. There are many rewards. He is in distress. There are many punishments. He is in difficulty. At first he is harsh and later fears the multitude. He is utterly unskillful. He approaches with gifts and entreaties. He wishes to rest. The military is wrathful and faces one for a long time without either engaging or withdrawing. One must carefully examine this.
Finally, we examine the enemy general's state of mind. As he is key to uniting the army, his methods of command immediately reveal conditions within his military. Here he has lost the Tao of leadership. By its very unpredictability, such an army can cause considerable damage. If its intentions are not fully apparent, be wary.
In the military, more is not better. Do not advance in a martial way. It is sufficient to gather strength, assess the enemy, and take him. That is all. However, if one does not plan and takes the enemy lightly, one will certainly be captured by him.
Victory arises from preponderance, which grows from knowledge and is expressed in mastery of sure. Do not seek it in accumulation alone. Do not waste resources in military display. The moment advantageous conditions arise, recognize them and direct your forces there. Swift victory is the general's goal.
If the troops do not yet feel close kinship with one and they are punished, they will not submit. If they do not submit, they are difficult to employ. If the troops already feel close kinship with one and punishments are not carried out, do not employ them.
The general establishes close kinship with those in his command. Thus, troops can execute their duties even under the most difficult conditions. Without bonds of loyalty, punishment is felt only as pain and causes resentment. With kinship established, punishment is understood as a matter of taking responsibility for one's actions. Then it expresses what is right and true. It must be carried out to maintain the integrity of this military world.
And so assemble them by fellowship. Make them uniform by the marshal. This is what is meant by certain to seize it.
In assembling an army, individuals are brought into association from many conditions. They become soldiers only when the general unites them. He creates such powerful bonds that all come to share the same intentions. Transformed by discipline and care, they can undertake their dangerous tasks together.
If one acts consistently to train the people will submit. If one acts inconsistently to train the people will not submit. One who acts consistently is in accord with the multitude.
One who acts consistently is in accord with the multitude. Literally, the text says that the general and his army gain each other. Thus the troops can die with him, live with him, and not deceive him. Consistent leadership allows people to develop confidence that their environment is intact and trustworthy, worth exerting themselves for. Otherwise, not knowing what to expect, they cannot relax into their world and fully assume their roles.
Forms of the earth. Sun Tzu said, "The forms of the earth: open, hung, stalled, narrow, steep, and distant."
Although terrain is also discussed in other parts of the text, These 6 forms of earth are unique to this chapter. They are not only physical shape and dimension, but equally the qualities of ground and the kinds of interaction that can take place upon it.
I am able to go, he is able to come. This is called open. As for the open form, be first to occupy the high and yang. Secure your supply routes. If I do battle, it is advantageous.
The open form refers to any space where you and the other can move freely in and out. Since it is equally available to both, you must be first to establish a strong position there.
I can go, but it is difficult to return. This is called hung. As for the hung form, when the enemy is unprepared, I emerge and am victorious over him. When the enemy is prepared, if I emerge and am not victorious, it is difficult to return. It is not advantageous.
Once this space has been entered, no one can move cleanly out. Whoever tries to do so will be snagged by some obstacle. Thus, take action only if you are certain it will lead to victory.
I emerge, and it is not advantageous. He emerges, and it is not advantageous. This is called stalled. As for the stalled form, although the enemy offers me advantage, I do not emerge. I lead my troops away. To order a strike when half the enemy has emerged is advantageous.
The stalled form offers no ready advantage. Enter only when the enemy have exposed their vulnerability.
As for the narrow form, if I occupy it first, I must fill it and await the enemy. If the enemy occupies it first and fills it, do not pursue. If he does not fill it, pursue.
The narrow form becomes advantageous only if you occupy it completely. Then there are no options left to the enemy.
As for the steep form, if I occupy it first, I must occupy the high and yang and await the enemy. If the enemy occupies it first, I lead the troops away. Do not pursue.
Great promise of advantage, great danger. If you cannot secure its benefits, avoid this form of the earth.
As for the distant form, since sure is equal, it is difficult to provoke battle. To do battle is not advantageous.
There is no way to engage the enemy. You can offer no apparent advantage to draw them out. There is no clear way in, and you have no obvious preponderance.
All these 6 are a Tao of the earth, the general's utmost responsibility. One cannot but examine them.
The earth, or the ground of any situation, offers certain conditions within which battle can take place. One must respect these conditions and follow the actions they dictate. They cannot be manipulated. The ground of conflict is shared, and these 6 forms of the earth belong to no one. Their sure change constantly as we move through them. Thus, the narrow can become the steep, which can become the distant. These forms of sure can be discerned in any situation. These are called a Tao of the earth, standing for the countless ways the earth takes form and human beings join with it to form sure. It is the general's responsibility to know them all. This is not done by knowing just these 6, nor by knowing every possible one, but by seeing how this knowledge forms a whole.
And so in the military there is driven off, the bow unstrung, dragged down, the mountain collapsing, chaos and routed. All these 6 are not a calamity of heaven. They are the excesses of the general.
Battle occurs in a particular ground, but it is the general who determines what takes place there. If he does not fulfill his proper role, he brings heaven-like calamity upon his forces.
Now sure is equal, and he uses 1 to strike 10. This is called driven off.
2 forces have equal advantage of the earth. If the general sets his smaller force against the enemy's larger, he will be put to flight.
The troops are strong and the officers weak. This is called the bow unstrung.
Strong forces without leadership are a weapon without a trigger.
The officers are strong and the troops weak. This is called dragged down.
Even the strongest officers cannot hold up weak troops.
A great officer is wrathful and does not submit. When he encounters the enemy, he is filled with rancor and does battle on his own. The general does not know his ability. This is called the mountain collapsing.
An officer's fierce wrath turns to rage in the face of battle, bringing down the army with him. His general had no knowledge of this propensity.
The general is weak and not strict. His training and leadership are not clear. The officers and troops are inconstant. The formations of the military are jumbled. This is called chaos.
When the general does not lead, the army cannot follow. All becomes confusion.
The general cannot assess the enemy. With the few, he engages the many. With the weak, he strikes the strong. The military is without elite forces. This is called routed.
Without knowledge of the enemy, the general commits catastrophic errors. All is lost.
All these six are a Tao of defeat, the general's utmost responsibility. One cannot but examine them.
Like the forms of earth, these six are a Tao. Taken as a whole, they represent the multiplicity of ways in which the general will be defeated before battle ever takes place. He must know the dangers of them all.
Now forms of the earth are an assistance to the military. Assess the enemy and determine victory. Appraise the steep and level, the far and near. This is a Tao of the superior general. One who knows these and employs battle is certainly victorious. One who does not know these and employs battle is certainly defeated.
These are three kinds of knowledge that the general possesses. He discerns the true forms of earth, and their assistance arises naturally for him. He sees the strength and weakness of his enemy and their leadership. He can read the sure of varied landscapes and circumstances. Knowing these as a Tao brings victory.
And so, when according to the Tao of battle there is certain victory and the ruler says, "Do not do battle," one can certainly do battle. When according to the Tao of battle there is no victory and the ruler says one must do battle, one cannot do battle.
The sovereign chooses the general for his ability to attain victory. Final judgment about doing battle is the general's responsibility alone. That determination arises from his full knowledge of battleground conditions, where advantage constantly transforms and shifts. Respecting the ruler's confidence, discerning the present moment, and trusting his judgment, the general finds victory.
And so he advances, yet does not seek fame. He retreats, yet does not avoid blame. He seeks only to preserve the people, and his advantage accords with that of the ruler. He is the treasure of the state.
The general remains attuned to the vision of the sovereign and the welfare of the people. Thus, he is not confused by praise, blame, or reputation. As nothing can prevent him from proper action, he keeps to victory by taking hold.
He looks upon the troops as his children. Thus they can venture into deep river valleys with him. He looks upon the troops as his beloved sons. Thus they can die together with him.
United in profound kinship with their general, the troops respond with uncompromising loyalty. They will obey every order. They will accompany him anywhere, into grave danger, into death.
He is generous, yet unable to lead. He is loving, yet unable to give orders. He is chaotic and unable to bring order. They are like spoiled children. They cannot be employed.
By themselves, virtues such as kindness or love are ineffective means of leadership. They must be fully joined to clear discipline before they foster a natural hierarchy of things. The general must be soft and hard, a proper yes and a proper no. Only then can his army arise in order.
Knowing my troops can strike, yet not knowing the enemy cannot be struck, this is half of victory. Knowing the enemy can be struck, yet not knowing my soldiers cannot strike, this is half of victory. Knowing the enemy can be struck, knowing my soldiers can strike, yet not knowing that the form of the earth cannot be used to do battle, this is half of victory.
This is the initial summary of the chapter. Knowledge of self and other is vital to the general in every endeavor. Yet it is insufficient without knowledge of the ground, the environment within which battle occurs.
And so one who knows the military acts and is not confused, initiates and is not exhausted.
This is the second summary of the chapter. The general is clear-minded and inexhaustible. His clarity arises from his intimate knowledge of the military, and thus his actions lead to victory even in conditions of chaos. He is not depleted because he gains energy by moving with the forms of earth, the larger patterns of his world.
And so it is said, know the other and know oneself, then victory is not in danger. Know earth and know heaven, then victory can be complete.
In ancient China, heaven stands for the range of phenomena from weather to celestial process to the imperial vision. Earth extends similarly from terrain to the practical grounds of any activity. Danger can be avoided by knowing self and other. Being all victorious depends on knowledge of heaven and earth.
The 9 grounds. Sun Tzu said, the method of employing the military.
This chapter speaks to a multitude of military methods. The first 2/3 addresses the 9 grounds and command of troops within enemy territory. Then the 9 grounds are discussed again, and the chapter turns to general military matters.
There is dispersed ground, light ground, contested ground, connected ground, junction ground, heavy ground, spread out ground, enclosed ground, and death ground. The feudal lords battle for this ground. This is dispersed.
All parties consider this ground important, and there are no means to gain easy advantage. Do not fight over it.
I enter another's ground, but not deeply. This is light.
Do not engage or make a commitment here. The sure is not yet favorable.
If I obtain it, it is advantageous. If he obtains it, it is also advantageous. This is contested.
Since anyone can benefit from possessing this ground, your enemy will surely want it. Prevent this. Use care in initiating an attack.
I am able to go, he is able to come. This is connected.
Because this ground is equally available to all, everyone is vulnerable. Cross only if you are well protected. Establish ties where it is possible.
Where the grounds of 3 feudal lords meet, the one who arrives first will obtain the multitudes of all under heaven. This is junction.
This boundary is shared, and each of the 3 parties has a home base nearby. If you are first to establish yourself strongly, you can dominate all. This will require allegiances.
I enter another's ground deeply, with many walled cities and towns at my back. This is heavy.
Since you are deeply committed, keep your forces tightly gathered. With no possibility of support from home, You must be self-sufficient.
I move through mountains, forests, and swamps, in some roads difficult to move along. This is spread out.
In such places, it is easy for the enemy to establish threatening positions. Do not linger.
The way by which I exit and enter is narrow. The way by which I pursue and return is circuitous. His few can strike my many. This is enclosed.
With access limited and pathways indirect, this ground promises great danger. All forms of Shur work in the enemy's favor. You must block his access to them. Only careful planning will see you out.
If quick, I survive. If not quick, I am lost. This is death.
No choice but to do battle. Everything will be won with swift action, or lost without it.
Therefore, in dispersed ground, do not do battle. In light ground, do not stop. In contested ground, do not attack. In connected ground, do not cross. In junction ground, join with allies. In heavy ground, plunder. In spread out ground, move. In enclosed ground, strategize. In death ground, do battle.
4 of these 9 grounds are discussed at the beginning of chapter 8. All 9 also appear again in the middle of this chapter. This passage demonstrates the great utility of naming. 9 times it captures a complex relationship in a phrase or two, such as, I am able to go, he is able to come. Then it reduces that to a single word. This is connected. In conclusion, it offers pith advice. In connected ground, do not cross. Once you have the name, you have captured the essence, and your more complete knowledge of the situation readily arises. Then it is easy to see the great variety of responses that may be called for. These 9 are not exhaustive. Instead, they urge us to build our repertory of understanding, to begin to master all possibilities that may arise.
In ancient times, those called skilled at battle were able to prevent the enemy's van and rear from reaching each other, the many and the few from relying on each other, noble and base from helping each other, superior and inferior from coordinating with each other, separated troops from regrouping, the assembled military from becoming uniform.
Separate that which holds the other together. Kinship, alliances, coordination, the root of their strength. When that unity is cut, what was a single Tao becomes many parts. Thus, one skilled in battle cuts down the enemy's strategy.
If it accords with advantage, then act. If it does not accord with advantage, then stop.
Advantage is anything that brings victory. For the sage commander, there is no other motivation to action.
Dare one ask, the enemy amassed and in good order is about to approach. How do I await him? I say, seize what he loves, and he will heed you.
Do not confront the enemy in their strength, but seize something they hold dear. Their force is useless here. They must stop to listen. You need not destroy the enemy's cherished object or their forces. Instead, you can take them whole. Anything you cherish makes you vulnerable. Prepare yourself to relinquish it.
It is the nature of the military that swiftness rules. Ride others' inadequacies. Go by unexpected ways. Attack where he has not taken precautions.
Attack swiftly where the enemy is weak, where they are not, where they are undefended. These are the empty. Your momentum only increases because they offer no resistance. These are means of skillful movement.
In sum, the Tao of being an invader. Enter deeply and one is concentrated. The defenders do not subdue one. plunder rich countryside. The three armies have enough to eat. Carefully nourish and do not work them. Consolidate chi and accumulate strength. Move the military about and appraise one's strategies. Be unfathomable.
Hostile ground heightens your focus. Cut off from home support, you take nourishment from the enemy. Such supply lines cannot be severed. Use the threat surrounding you to stay gathered and sustain your troops. Varying your forms, plans, location, and intention, you cannot be known.
Throw them where they cannot leave. Facing death, they will not be routed. Officers and men facing death, how could one not obtain their utmost strength? When military officers are utterly sinking, they do not fear. Where they cannot leave, they stand firm. When they enter deep, they hold tightly. Where they cannot leave, they fight. Therefore they are untuned yet disciplined, unsought yet obtained, without covenant yet in kinship, without orders yet trusting.
Extreme situations cause your troops to respond from profound sources of power. Training and commands cannot accomplish this. Dire configurations of sure, however, automatically evoke it. It is unsought, yet attained.
Prohibit omens, remove doubt, and even death seems no disaster.
When soldiers face death, the structures of military life become irrelevant. In such extreme conditions, one can let go of omens or doubts, the mirage of mysterious forces and second thoughts. As smaller reference points dissolve, everything turns clear and immediate. Even death, the ultimate point of reference, has no special power.
My officers do not have surplus wealth. It is not that they hate goods. They do not have surplus deaths. It is not that they hate longevity. On the days that orders are issued, the tears of seated officers moisten their lapels. The tears of those reclining cross their cheeks. Throw them where they cannot leave. It is the bravery of Chuan Chu and Cao Gui.
Zhuan Zhu and Zhao Gui were military retainers known for acts of outrageous courage. Their tales, from the 6th and 7th centuries BCE, are recounted in the historical records. Your troops are ordinary human beings. They love goods and hate death. They can be overcome by their emotions. Such attributes might call into question their appropriateness for military service. But these qualities are what make them effective soldiers. Bravery arises from cowardice. Threatened with loss of life, they fight desperately to survive. Placed in the right sure, their natural response unleashes enormous power.
And so one skilled at employing the army may be compared to the Shui Ran. The Shui Ran is a snake of Mount Hung. Strike its head and the tail arrives. Strike its tail and the head arrives. Strike its midsection and both head and tail arrive. Dare one ask, can one then make them like the Shui Ran? I reply, one can. The people of Yue and the people of Wu hate each other. When they are in the same boat crossing the river, they help each other like the left and right hand.
Though there are various accounts of the Shui Ran in Chinese mythology, this is the earliest recorded reference to it. Yue and Wu were bitter rivals in the 6th century BCE. Sun Tzu is said to have assisted the ruler of Wu in his defeat of Yue, though his name does not appear in the historical records of that conflict. The Shui Ran is perfectly coordinated with itself. It is instinctively of one mind. In the right conditions, even otherwise opposing elements join as one body. Here, those conditions are the threat of death, which evokes powers comparable to those of the mythic world.
Therefore, tying horses together and burying wheels is not enough to rely on. Make bravery uniform. This is a Tao of governance. Attain both hard and soft. This is a pattern of earth.
The Chinese word for governance implies correcting or making orthodox. Placing physical objects between you and the enemy will not defend you from their attack. Instead, transform your soldiers. Find Shi that unifies them in mind so that extremes of cowardice or bravery are moderated. This is skill in ordering. At the same time, master the natural world. Hard and soft are forms of earth and also the qualities of any situation. To take it whole, you must be able to hold all possibilities and extremes.
And so one skilled at employing the military takes them by the hand as if leading a single person. They cannot hold back.
Your command is so intimate, the troops hear you as if you were speaking singly to each of them. United in this kinship, they cannot but follow you.
In his activity, the commander is tranquil and thus inscrutable, orthodox and thus brings order. He is able to stupefy the ears and eyes of officers and troops, preventing them from having it. He changes his activities, alters his strategies, preventing the people from discerning. He changes his camp, makes his route circuitous, preventing the people from obtaining his plans.
To be invisible, you must first be so orthodox that nothing remains to give you away. Then you must be so extraordinary that no one can predict your location or purpose. You must be equally ungraspable to your own troops. This is for their safety as well as the authority of your command.
The leader sets the time of battle with them, like climbing high and removing the ladder. The leader enters with them deep into the land of the feudal lords, pulling the trigger. Like driving a flock of sheep, he drives them there, he drives them here. No one knows where they are going. He gathers the multitude of the three armies and throws them into the defile. This is what is meant by the activity of the commander.
The general is responsible for victory. Thus he throws his troops into circumstances that realize their greatest strength, setting the moment of its release. They must be allowed no knowledge of these conditions. They can have no choice but to follow him. In times of extreme peril, such decisive action is not only effective, it may be one's only means of survival. Success depends on the troops' utter loyalty.
The variations of the 9 grounds, the advantages of contracting and extending, the pattern of human nature, one cannot but examine them.
Here, the chapter is summarized in terms of its 3 major themes, which are 3 kinds of knowledge the general must possess. First are the 9 grounds, forms of Shi, and the advantage that comes from each. Second are principles of movement, either withdrawing from the enemy or expanding one's position. Third is knowing human nature, which allows the general to predict troops' reactions to varied circumstances. The chapter then begins again, reintroducing the 9 grounds and moving to general military matters.
In sum, being an invader, deep then concentrated, shallow then dispersed. To leave the state and go over the border with soldiers, this is crossing ground. 4 ways in, this is junction ground. To enter deeply, this is heavy ground. To enter shallowly, this is light ground. Unyielding at the back, narrow in front, this is enclosed ground. Unyielding at the back, enemy in front, this is death ground. No way to leave, this is exhaustion ground.
This initial set of 7 grounds includes exhaustion ground, which is found only in the bamboo text. Of these 7, 5 are included among the following set of 9.
Therefore, in dispersed ground, I will unify their will. In light ground, I will make them come together. In contested ground, I will keep them from lingering. In connected ground, I will make firm my ties. In junction ground, I will be careful of what I rely on. In heavy ground, I will hasten to bring up my rear. In spread out ground, I will advance along his roads. In enclosed ground, I will block the gaps. In death ground, I will show them that we will not live.
These 9 grounds are identical to those presented at the start of this chapter. The pith instructions from that section are rendered here with somewhat varied emphases.
And so the nature of the feudal lords. When enclosed, they resist. When there is no holding back, they fight. When overcome, they follow.
Creating barriers intensifies the space that they enclose. The enemy hardens their position. When all alternatives are closed off, the enemy's resistance turns into battle. Then they will go along with you only after having been thoroughly overcome.
Therefore, not knowing the strategies of the feudal lords, one cannot ally with them. Not knowing the form of mountains and forest, defiles and gorges, marshes and swamps, one cannot move the army. Not employing local guides, one cannot obtain the advantage of the ground. Not knowing one of these 4 or 5, one is not the military of the kings and overlords.
Kings were the rulers of states in the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE. Overlord was the title of several rulers who briefly established hegemony over the others. The first 6 lines appear verbatim in Chapter 7, suggesting that this part of the chapter is especially loose in organization. The passage reiterates the importance of knowledge to any form of action. The final 2 lines, however, show that it is necessary to possess all these types of knowledge, transforming this section from a list of observations to a list of essentials.
The military of those kings and overlords, if they attack a great state, then its multitude is unable to gather together. Their awesomeness spreads over the enemy, and his allies cannot assemble. Therefore, do not contend for allies in all under heaven. Do not cultivate balance in all under heaven. Trust in self-interest. Spread one's awesomeness over the enemy. Thus his state can be seized, and his walled cities can be made to submit.
Your great power prevents the enemy from forming a cohesive unit or joining with their peers. Thus, you attack their alliances. The overlords obtained hegemony through the careful balancing of allies and enemies. Work instead from your own power to overawe, drawing the other fully into your world. This is victory, which comes always from the larger reference point.
Without methods rewards, without proper orders, bind the multitude of the 3 armies, as if leading a single person. Bind them with deeds, do not command them with words. Bind them with harm, do not command them with advantage. Mire them in the ground of extinction, and still they survive. Sink them in death ground, and still they live. Now the multitude is sunk in harm, yet still they are able to make defeat into victory.
Without resort to hope and fear, consistency or kindness, discarding all conventions of leadership, the general binds the troops to him. He relies not on words, but on action that cuts to the bone, bypassing concept and kindness. Thrown into the certainty of death, his troops transform hopelessness into victory.
And so conducting the affairs of the military lies in carefully discerning the enemy's purpose. Concentrate strength in one direction. Go 1,000 li and kill his general. This is what is meant by skillful deeds.
If you know the enemy's purpose, you can find their vital point. Focus your energy there and strike. Thus, you can end the conflict with a single blow, even from a great distance. You need not destroy their goods or people. This is taking whole.
Therefore, on the day the policy is initiated, close the passes and break the tallies. Do not let their emissaries pass. Hone it in the upper court in order to fix the matter.
In ancient China, a messenger from the field proved his genuineness by producing the other half of a wooden tally, which had previously been split between commander and sovereign. Here, all tallies are destroyed. The moment war is declared, abruptly change the protocols of diplomatic relations. Secure your boundaries and plan at the highest level.
When the enemy opens the outer gate, one must quickly enter. Make what he loves the first objective. Hide the time of battle from him. Discard the ink line and respond to the enemy in order to decide the matter of battle. Therefore, at first be like a virgin. The enemy opens the door. Afterward, be like an escaped rabbit. The enemy will be unable to resist.
The ink line is the equivalent of the carpenter's chalk line. It is snapped to ensure that marks are drawn straight. When obstacles disappear during battle, move quickly to seize the crucial goal. Prevent the enemy from re-establishing equilibrium. At this point, you must discard the even measures that have been essential to your process so far and respond to whatever form the enemy offers. Just as water determines its movement in accordance with the ground, the military determines victory in accordance with the enemy. Innocence disarms. Swiftness is victorious.
Attack by fire. Sun Tzu said, "In sum, there are 5 attacks by fire. The first is called setting fire to people. The second is called setting fire to stores. The third is called setting fire to baggage trains. The fourth is called setting fire to armories. The fifth is called setting fire in tunnels."
In ancient China, siege parties sometimes tunneled under city walls. One means of defense was to pump poisonous gas into the invader's tunnel. Modern warfare can be considered the age of fire, as it depends on technologies that range from gunpowder to thermonuclear weapons. Though the scale in this chapter is much smaller, the principle is the same. Fire consumes and devastates. It is a primordial element, immediately directing the enemy's attention to the most critical factors. Thus, its power to abruptly transform a situation is greater than other forms of direct attack.
Making fire has requisites. The requisites must be sought out and prepared. There is a season for setting fires. There are days for starting fires. The season is when heaven is dry. The days are when the lunar mansion is the winnowing basket, the wall, the wings, and the chariot platform. All 4 lunar mansions are days when the wind rises.
The Chinese divided the celestial sphere into 28 equal sections, like segments of an orange. These are the lunar mansions, named for the constellation at the horizon that marks each segment. Heaven and earth set forth the conditions in which fire can be employed. The earth provides the materials necessary for fire building, and heaven periodically offers the optimum meteorological conditions. Employ fire only when events support it and conditions are auspicious.
If fire is set inside, respond immediately from the outside. If fire is set and his military is still, do not attack. Rush to where the fire is calamitous. If one can pursue them, then pursue. If one cannot pursue, then stop. If fire can be set outside, Do not wait to set it inside. Set it according to the season.
Go to the point of greatest calamity. Don't assume fire has made the enemy vulnerable. Keep your energy gathered and move only to take advantage of their confusion. Since it is easier to set a fire on the outside of the enemy's protected space, do so if the opportunity arises.
If fire is set upwind, do not attack from downwind. If during the day wind is prolonged, at night the wind will stop. One must know the variations of the 5 fires. Use counting to watch for the time.
Counting refers to the calculations, astronomical and calendrical, by which one determines the proper time for fire making. As with any natural force, fire's powers are subtle, varied, and intense. The general must know the basic types and their innumerable variations. This requires the ability to discern natural patterns on both a small and large scale.
And so one who uses fire to aid an attack is dominant. One who uses water to aid an attack is strong. Water can be used to cut off. It cannot be used to seize.
Water can be used to cut off. The reference is to events like the diversion of the river Jin, used to surround and flood the city Jinyang in the 5th century BCE. The siege is said to have lasted 3 years. Water can strengthen you, but using fire is an outrageous act to which the enemy cannot but respond. It can bring closure to a campaign.
Now battle for victory, attack and attain it. But if one does not follow up on the achievement, it is inauspicious. One's fate is wealth flowing away. Thus it is said, the enlightened ruler contemplates it, the good general follows up on it.
When you have committed to extreme action, be prepared to take advantage of the chaotic conditions you create. Winning on the battlefield is an initial step toward victory. Unless you can extend this achievement, its value is lost. This depends both on the enlightened ruler's vision and on his general's ability to bring it to fruition.
If it is not advantageous, do not act. If it is not attainable, do not employ troops. If it is not in danger, do not do battle. Victory
is the general's goal. Do not engage in military activity if no benefit will accrue from it.
The ruler cannot raise an army on account of wrath. The general cannot do battle on account of rancor. If it accords with advantage, then employ troops. If it does not, then stop. Wrath can return to joy. Rancor can return to delight. An extinguished state cannot return to existence. The dead cannot return to life. Thus the enlightened sovereign is careful about this. The good general is cautious about this. These are a Tao of securing the state and keeping the army whole.
The nature of most polarities is that they are reversible. These include like and dislike, or the extraordinary and orthodox, which turn quickly each into the other. Life and death succeed each other, like the waxing and waning moon. But human dead do not come back to life, nor does the extinguished state return to protect its people. Attack by fire and other unremitting applications of force cause irreversible destruction to every part of life. If loosed in wrath, the opportunity for advantage is lost as well. Since his objective is to safeguard state and army, the general must use them only as part of taking whole.
Employing spies. Sun Tzu said, "In sum, when raising 100,000 soldiers and setting out on a campaign of 1,000 li, the expenses of the 100 clans and the contributions of the nation are 1,000 gold pieces a day. Inner and outer are disturbed. People are exhausted on the roads. 700,000 households are unable to manage their affairs."
Virtually all these phrases are also found in Chapter 2's critique of the costs of war. They demonstrate the way this text is assembled from a pool of shared terms and concepts. Responding to conflict with massed aggression is severely damaging to one's world, from immediate concerns to international relations.
On guard against them for years to contend for a single day's victory, yet by begrudging rank and the reward of 100 gold pieces, he does not know the nature of the enemy. He is utterly inhumane. He is not the general of the people. He is not the assistant of the ruler. He is not the ruler of victory.
Each day the army is in the field costs 1,000 gold pieces. Yet real knowledge of the enemy can give you victory in a day. Such knowledge can only be obtained through spies. The general may be reluctant to employ spies. He must honor them with the same reward and rank as his bravest soldiers. This may seem like compromising the integrity of the military. Yet in adopting that view, he prolongs the destruction of human life, undermines his sovereign's power, and fails to attain victory. When the general knows taking whole, deception can be a part of genuineness.
And so the means by which an enlightened sovereign and a wise general act, and so are victorious over others and achieve merit superior to the multitudes. This is foreknowledge. Foreknowledge cannot be grasped from ghosts and spirits, cannot be inferred from events, cannot be projected from calculation. It must be grasped from people's knowledge.
Knowledge leads to victory. Spies lead to knowledge. The general seeks insight into the enemy's processes and procedures from the inside out. The goal is not merely advance warning, but understanding how something set in motion will turn out. Foreknowledge is especially difficult to obtain, since it concerns things that no one can see. Spirit divination presupposes a hidden reality with power over events. Inference assumes that precedents will hold good into the future. Extrapolation is distanced from the intimate situation of here and now. Each has its use, but one can be sure about the future only through knowledge that is immediate, concrete, detailed, and complex in human ways. Its best source is direct perception.
And so there are 5 kinds of spy to employ. There is the native spy, the inner spy, the turned spy, the dead spy, and the living spy. When the 5 spies arise together and no one knows their Tao, this is what is meant by spirit-like web. It is the treasure of the people's sovereign. The living spy returns and reports. Employ the native spy from among the local people. Employ the inner spy from among their officials. Employ the turned spy from among enemy spies. The dead spy spreads false information abroad. I order my spy to know it, and he transmits it to the enemy spy.
Your spies come from every part of society, bringing knowledge of the full range of enemy life. When their activities are woven together, they become an elusive network that is everywhere at once. No one knows where they might appear. They are a great treasury of knowledge.
And so, in the kinship of the 3 armies, no kinship is more intimate than that of a spy. No reward is more generous than that for a spy. No affair is more secret than that of a spy. If not a sage, one cannot employ spies. If not humane, one cannot send out spies. If not subtle and secret, one cannot obtain a spy's treasure. Secret, secret, there is nothing for which one cannot employ spies. When the affairs of a spy are heard before they are underway, the spy and those who have been told all die.
The standard text has, "If one is not humane and righteous," citing the paramount virtues of Confucianism. The bamboo text has only humane, which in its non-Confucian use means kindly or generous. Later editors apparently tried to bring the Sun Tzu under Confucian sway. A sage is the highest wisdom holder in the Chinese world. His supreme qualities of mind give him the ability to shape the present and know the future. The spy is an authentic source of knowledge that must be cherished, nurtured, and rewarded. In this relationship, everything is intensified: the kinship, the potential for new knowledge, the consequences. This weapon is so sharp that it must be kept concealed. Otherwise, it may unpredictably injure itself or you. This has its own rules. One must be a sage to use spies, to feel their vulnerability, to keep oneself and them from jeopardy, to manage the delicacy of their operations amid the enemy, to interpret and apply their knowledge, to handle reversals and false information. Things can go quickly and disastrously wrong.
In sum, the army one wishes to strike, the walled city one wishes to attack, and the person one wishes to kill, one must first know the family name and given name of the defending general, his intimates, the steward, the gatekeeper, and attendants. I order my spy to surely seek them out and know them.
The more extreme your action, the more detailed your foreknowledge must be.
I must seek out the enemy's spies who come to spy on me. Accordingly, I benefit them, direct them, and then release them. Thus a turned spy can be obtained and employed. With this knowledge, the local spy and the inner spy can thus be obtained and sent out. With this knowledge, the dead spy thus spreads false information and can be sent to tell the enemy. With this knowledge, the living spy can thus be sent out on time. One must know the matter of the 5 spies. Knowing it surely lies in the turned spy. Thus one cannot but be generous with a turned spy.
Knowledge from the turned spy is a foundation for all the general's action. Even more than a captured charioteer, he must be rewarded and brought around. Through him, the general may learn the intentions behind enemy action. Thus, he can direct the activities of all other spies, defeating the enemy by cutting down their strategy. Directing the turned spy requires particular attention. He has already once betrayed his lord, and he may betray you as well. You must be most intimate with him. In usual circumstances, the general holds firm the boundaries. Here he is sending people behind enemy borders and welcoming others within his own. The general, then, must be able to maintain or cross boundaries without regard to how others see them. He is beyond predictability, holding a vision that is invisible until the result shows victory. Like forms of esoteric knowledge, spying can be dangerous, unappealing, shifty, and profound. It must be kept secret.
When Yen arose, Yi Zhi was in Xia. When Zhou arose, Liu Ya was in Yen.
According to legend, Yi Zhi and Liu Ya were noble ministers who betrayed their evil rulers to virtuous invaders. The Sun Tzu is arguing that these men of highest reputation were in fact turned spies. This interpretation has not been accepted by later Confucian readers. The preceding 2 lines are from the received text. The bamboo text is fragmentary here, but adds the following. When Yen arose, Su Qin was in Qi. The figure of Su Qin appears in legends of persuasion and betrayal from the years around 300 BCE. Tradition made Sun Tzu a contemporary of Confucius, 551 to 479, but most scholars now date the principal assemblage of his lineage text to sometime in the 4th century BCE. The presence of someone like Su Qin implies either a later date for its compilation, the continuing permeability of its boundaries after the mid-300s, or both.
Only if the enlightened ruler and wise general can use people of superior knowledge as spies will they surely achieve great merit. These are essentials of the military. The three armies rely on them and act.
Superior knowledge is difficult to attain. It depends on people like Yi Zhi or Liu Ya, who can keep their competing alliances separate and maintain the consistency of their disparate realms. Knowledge is the basis for any action. Superior knowledge will assure victory.